This week in the conversation, I had the honor to receive out of Calgary, Canada, prolific writer Dustin Giborski. We're going to be talking about his debut novel, fantasy novel titled Veytia, which is the first of a long series. But before we get into the video, I just want to remind everyone that it's important to subscribe to this YouTube channel. And if you do, don't forget to click the notification bell so that way every time a video is posted, it's going directly into your portable. So let's get started. Again, my name is Ardain Isma, and I'm here this afternoon with an impeccable author, a prolific writer. I'm here with Dustin Giborski. He's joining me from Calgary, Canada. We're going to be talking about his debut novel titled Veytia. Dustin, welcome to the conversation.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here.
Okay, Justin, could you please tell the viewers of CSMS Magazine who is Dustin Giborski?
Well, I'm actually working on my English degree right now to get more into professional writing. Yeah, like you said, this is my debut novel. I started working on it just over 20 years ago. Started putting this whole universe together, and just last year in May of 2020, published Veytia. Finally got the first book out, and I think the series will be about 6. But yeah, outside of that, I've worked a lot of different jobs, just kind of things that somewhat into, but jumped industries 6 or 7 times before finally deciding to go to school to do this. But and then yeah, I live in Calgary with my fiance, and just kind of lucky person, good family, good people all around me.
Beautiful. It's very nice to be able to say that you are surrounded by loved ones who truly care for
you. Yeah, very fortunate. Absolutely.
So just before we get into the story, something you say that really catches my attention. You spent 18 years, developing a world of your own that you call the Lion.
Yeah, oh, sorry, Balian, yeah.
Okay, so that means you've been writing, because you're only about 35?
Yeah, 35.
So, I mean, for 18 years, been building this. I mean, that's a lot of effort that you put in there.
Yeah, it was, thank you. But it's, I started sort of small, and then I found myself just kept asking why. So, I have this idea of why, where does that come from? And it just spiraled into this whole universe that, I mean, I could probably write a few thousand books about it if I wanted to, right? But, in hindsight, I probably could have started on the first book maybe a little sooner. I maybe wrote out a bit too much of like all the backstory in the universe and everything like that. Right? But I like having it all planned out, before I finished the first draft of the first book. I had the whole series mapped out. I know exactly what's happening and why and how it's going to end and everything like that. So it's just a matter of finding the time and energy to get it all done.
That's interesting. So let's dive into Veytia.
Right on.
The story centered around 2 main characters, one from each species. And I just want to say that you said the Arzian and also the Bratnim. And at the beginning of the story, they were enemies, but at some point, they found out they're just going to have to fight a common enemy. So they join, together to fight the common enemy. My question is, why did you frame the story that way? Is there something specific, Dustin, that you want to teach society? Yeah.
Well, yeah, there's a few things, and some of it would be kind of spoilers, but in the the context of what you're bringing up is, yeah, as at odds as we can be, as different as people can be in things, there's always a lot of common ground. And I think if you can kind of put yourself aside a little bit, be willing to actually hear somebody out, you find that there's a lot more in common than you think. And if you're willing to work together, you can really accomplish a lot of great things, right? And I mean, in this scenario, they're kind of forced to work together, but it turns into something pretty advantageous for everyone involved. So yeah, I
You know
feel like
what?
that's
It's so true because, until we stop fighting over what's really divide us, and we start focusing on what can potentially unite us, you won't be able to find out how strong a unity can be. So
absolutely.
that's yeah. So, and then you say
I,
now
oh,
they form a bond to fighting together while trying to find their way home. Where
mhm.
is home?
Well, Veytia is their home. So I named the book after the world that they live in. Um, at the beginning of the story, it opens up, at least in the second chapter, with the two of them in a foreign land that they didn't know existed. Nobody in Veytia was aware that anything existed outside of it. Everyone who is alive, um, was born after the war had started. So there's no opportunity for them to explore yet, outside of when we first get to the beginning of the story. And then they finally branch out and start to wonder what's going on? What exactly is our world? What else is out there? Yeah.
And then you know what? There's something you say over here, and I really like a lot. Uh, you a kind of writer who just doesn't write just for the purpose of writing. You write, because you have a message. You
Absolutely.
wholeheartedly believe in that message, and you say over here you like to tackle deep existential question.
Hmm.
Can you please teach the audience a little bit about what you mean by existential questions?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't have any doctorate or anything like that, but spent a lot of time throughout my life just kind of really interested in what exactly is life, and finding out different people's experiences being one thing, but then also like, why are we here exactly? And um, I know that um, everyone is entitled to their own beliefs and everything like that, but I think that in reality we either can't totally understand, or we're not meant, or maybe we're not meant to totally understand. um, and I think there's some beauty in that. I think that if you can sort of wrap your head around, maybe I can't, put this into words, maybe there's no label that I can put on this, then maybe
Mm-hmm.
you can just enjoy it for what it is, right? Maybe we can just enjoy life. Maybe, instead of worrying about everything beyond the horizon, we can take care of our community, we can take care of ourselves and each other, and just enjoy, the gift that we have of living. And it's something that in a different way, because again, it's a different universe, a very different society in the book, that I sort of explore in their own way.
And you know what? They say fiction reflects reality.
Mm,
And there are a lot of fantasy writers that have come to the show, and they all always tell me it's important to build a world through the lenses of the world that you know.
mm,
So last time I had a Canadian author from Ontario. Uh,
right.
she built a beautiful world. Uh, and then she tried to breaks it down into different layers, if I so to speak, of
Hmm.
society. And what you have the exploited, and then you have the rich, and then you have everything in between. And we
Hmm.
have the differences of what you call class antagonism in the society.
Hmm.
And I see you precisely, you say that you tackle these existential questions, not only in your own writings, but also in the work of others. So you read a
Hmm.
lot, I presume, right?
as much as I can. Yeah.
Okay. So Dustin, when what type of, I presume that a writer reads a lot. It could be multiple genres in literature. Me personally, I'm very passionate about historical fiction. Now I'm
Mhm.
loving fantasy because I've been talking with so many fantasy writers. So, what about you, Dustin?
Um, well, mostly fantasy, some sci-fi, and then some of the, sort of generic, but like great books, right? Like, The Great Gatsby, Moby Dick, some classics, of course, right? Was really into Shakespeare when I was a kid, but I was about 14 when I read The Hobbit, and then I read The Lord of the Rings right after, and I was hooked after, and then I started reading a bunch of different fantasy books, right? But yeah, it's personally, I really enjoy the real escapism you get from fantasy. It's just,
Mm-hmm.
even though there's similarities, like we were talking about, it's so different
Mm-hmm.
from our own world. You really kind of, you sit down for a few hours, you kind of leave reality, and you can relax and go off and worry about someone else's life for a bit.
I like that.
Yeah.
I like that. My other question is, Veytia is the first of this series. So how many books do we expect to read in that series?
I'm guessing five or six. Like I said, I know um, where the story ends, where it's going, everything like that. But how long it'll actually be, I'm not positive. I think it'll be around six. I just recently finished the first draft of the second book,
Okay.
and it is quite a bit longer than I expected. So, we'll see exactly how many books, but I'm thinking about six.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Now, let me ask you a question. So, it's interesting as I like to talk to you because you're always you're very concise in your answers. Uh, Dustin, when you say you live with your fiance, because I've been married for more than 30 years, because I know that you cannot be a very interesting writer or a happy writer if you do not have the support of your spouse.
Mm.
How is it for you?
I'm incredibly lucky. Um, Both of us actually, when we met, we thought that, respectively,
Uh-huh.
when people would talk about finding the one, and oh, it just feels different, and we thought that was maybe a little romanticized. People were exaggerating, but it's true. It feels different, and having that person there for you, who's just supporting you, who's excited for you. Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, obviously you can't say for sure, but I wouldn't have gotten this far without her. There's no way.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very good. Just like me and
Yeah,
many
I
others
imagine.
that I know. Yeah. Now, I know in writing novelistic prose, and to be very good at it, you have to be able to read a lot, especially when you're writing a manuscript. Uh, you just briefly answered that, but I just want to add to the same question to be more precise. Um, do you always have a specific writer in mind every time you sit down to write uh, a fantasy story?
Um, I think it's yeah, it's Robert Jordan. He wrote The Wheel of Time, which was then finished by Brandon Sanderson. Robert Jordan passed away before
Mhm.
he was able to finish the series. But like I said, I got really into fantasy when I read Lord of the Rings. So obviously Tolkien was pretty
Mhm.
influential. But it was when I read Robert Jordan, um, the world that he built is just so vast. Like, it wasn't even very big land size wise, but there's so much going on, so many different ways of life, and so much history, and it just blew me away. And that's part of what a big part of what made me create a whole universe and sort of go overboard over 20 years in making a bunch of history and everything with it. But yeah, so it's just kind of when I was making it, it was him that always kind of had in mind with, you know, there's a reason and answer to everything. There's a good reason, a lot of history behind everything that happens and everything that is the way it is. Um, and that's why I always had in mind when I was building the universe. And now that I kind of have it all done, it's just kind of like leaving this reality and entering that one for me. I just kind of like step into another universe and then I'm telling a story about it. So I guess these days when I sit down to write, even with the prose, it's just kind of my own voice. Yeah, it was more in the developing like creative uh, process at the beginning that I had another author in mind, I suppose. But yeah.
I like that. So,
Yeah.
how is the response so far?
Oh, with the first book,
Uh-huh.
it's been getting traction a little slow. I'm not a great marketer, and like I said, the first book, it a lot happens. There's a lot there. I think it's a good read, obviously, but there's a lot more with when the second book is done.
Mhm.
Not to discredit the first book, but there'll be a lot more to sink your
I
teeth
had to
into.
discuss the first book.
Yeah, but there'll be more to sink your teeth into and like a better idea of how big the world really is. I should say the universe, and yeah, so that's when I'm kind of planning to maybe go a bit more at marketing with that. So it's got a little bit of traction, but not too much just yet.
And you know what? Because I know you live in Calgary, Canada.
Mm,
I've always wanted to visit Calgary. Never had
mm,
a chance. I've been to Ontario and Quebec.
mm.
I like the way every time I fly to Montreal, I have to rent a car, get the kids in the car. So we drive east and west, east towards Quebec City, and then
Right.
west towards Ottawa.
Mm.
And I love it. I really do. But Calgary is something that I've always wanted to visit. And I've never had a writer from Calgary until you. And like I said, so I've never had a writer from Calgary. It's the first time.
Mm.
And because I know landscape is important in writing. And they say also a writer writes best when he or she writes about the world he or she knows. So, how much of Calgary can we find in Veytia?
Well, quite a bit more of Banff. Like as you know, Banff is only a hour drive, less than an hour drive from Calgary. You can especially on the right days and in certain parts of the city, you can see the whole mountain range takes up almost the whole horizon, and it's
Mm-hmm.
just gorgeous. And Vasia is not quite the same as the mountains, not snow and everything. It's a little bit more we could call sort of volcanic, but it's very rocky. Um, and then it also it's again it's a fairly different universe, and Vasia is just one of the worlds, but it's sort of like a in a box. So it has a floor. It's massive compared to the size of the species that are in it, but it has like a floor and four walls and a ceiling. There's three lights on the ceiling that run diagonally and split through the middle. So it's fairly different, obviously, than ours. But yeah, we used to, we moved. I was born in Montreal,
Okay.
and we moved to my family moved to Calgary when I was 5, and we went up to Banff almost every weekend, especially in the summer, not as much in the winter, but went up almost every weekend, and kind of feels like I grew up there too, right? And yeah, that was definitely, you know, um, when I was developing the story, I knew where I wanted to start telling the story.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and shortly thereafter decided to make the landscape a lot like Banff. For
Okay,
sure.
that's what I
Yeah.
thought.
Hmm.
Because I know every time I have a guest, yeah, just for the purpose of time, sometimes we start talking about literature and then we switch just a little bit because we're human, we love
Yeah.
music, we love
Hmm.
food. If I were to ask you, what is a typical cuisine that is associated with Calgary?
Steak. They have some of the best beef in the world here, apparently. There's actually
Really?
a think they just call it the steakhouse too, but not far from Calgary is this little town called Longview, just a bit south of Calgary. And they have consistently been on the top 10 steakhouses in the world list.
Really?
And it is absolutely delicious. It's actually hard. It got to the point where when I visit other places, I don't get steak when I'm not here because it's that good.
Okay, I can see it, and I believe you.
Oh yeah.
That's other thing I want to ask you. How about, because I know Canadian music, it's just the same as American. So is there really a little bit of a difference if we dig through it?
Not very much. At least in my experience, what I've been exposed to. You can find some smaller bands that the lyrics might feel a little more local. They might have some things that pertain a bit more to like Calgary or the small towns around South Alberta. But really, it's very similar. There are more than a few bands that I didn't know were Canadian until I'd been listening to them for a few years. I said, "Oh, they're from Kelowna." Oh, okay. But no, it's quite a bit similar to what you'll hear in the States. Absolutely.
Okay. Now, my question is, since we're getting to the end of the conversation, I just want to ask you this specific question. Is there any author that you can say with absolute certainty he or she is my preferred author? It doesn't have to be a Canadian author.
Yeah. I guess, yeah, I know this is a bit of obvious, but for me it's always been Tolkien and Shakespeare.
Really?
I really loved Tolkien and the way he worded things, and then Shakespeare, I think it was partially because I was young. It was some of the first books I read. Obviously they had the sort of translations on the side because I was pretty young. But yeah, just their storytelling, especially in the way that I feel like they have a really good balance of that exceptional enough events that it's worth telling the story, but it's not unbelievable. Nothing is so far-fetched or coincidental that it's not believable. And yeah, I really respect both of them for that.
Okay. So I want to focus more on Shakespeare. Is it D1?
Sorry?
Is it the D1?
Yeah, yes. Sorry, yeah, absolutely. It cut out for a second there. Sorry about that. But yeah, absolutely. He just again, for me, it was early on when I started reading, and it just kind of opened my mind up to the way you can develop characters, and oh yeah, it just blew me away.
Okay. All right. So my last question, definitely last question. If there's a lesson that you would want to give to a young writer like you, who just want to be part of a writing community, okay, using his pen to send a message to the world through fantasy genre, what kind the advice you would give to that person?
I think it's like people say, listening to your own voice, to write what you love, and really don't aim for what would be marketable. You might not make it big as a writer, your stories might not take off, and that's fine. I think that you can tell, especially in a genre like fantasy, when somebody isn't writing what they just really want to be writing. I think it really jumps through the page when someone has created something that they're excited about and they're trying to share it with people. I think that really shines through in fantasy, and I think I don't think you have to. I don't think there's anything wrong with writing books anyway, but I think you're going to enjoy your time a lot better, and your story is going to shine more if you just go with what you really want to be telling.
Beautiful. You sound like a writer with deep-rooted conviction. I like that.
Yeah, thank
and
you.
with that, Dustin, I just have to say it's been such a pleasure to receive Dustin Giborski, a prolific writer, in the conversation.
Thank you so much. It was an absolute pleasure to be here.